My boyfriend said we'd break up if I didn't give him access to my bank accounts. I simply said, okay. He had no idea what happened next. My name is Elena Marlowe. I was 32 when I realized the man sleeping beside me believed everything I'd built already belonged to him. I was halfway through answering a work email when Caleb walked into the kitchen, holding his phone like it was evidence. We'd been together for 18 months, and for the last 6 we'd shared my apartment, though the lease and nearly every bill had always been in my name. He dropped into the chair without asking. Elena, we need to talk. I closed my laptop. One look at his face told me this wasn't going to be an ordinary conversation. Okay, I said, what's going on? He slid his phone across the table. A relationship article about financial transparency filled the screen. You wanted me to read this? I've been thinking. Caleb leaned back. It's time we combine finances. I looked at him for a moment before answering. Combine finances how? I want access to your bank accounts. I waited for the punchline. It never came. My bank accounts? That's what serious couples do, he said. Tanya and her boyfriend share everything. We already split expenses. What is this really about? The amusement left his face. It's about you hiding things from me. I'm not hiding anything. Then why can't I see? Because my personal finances are still my personal finances. Just like yours are yours. He laughed. So you don't trust me? No, I trust you. I just have boundaries. Boundaries? He repeated, as if I had insulted him. We live together, Elena. We sleep in the same bed. I know what you look like when you wake up. I know what medication is in your bathroom cabinet. But your precious savings account is some sacred private temple I'm not allowed to see? Yes, I said, keeping my voice even. It is private. His face hardened. The conversation changed in an instant. Caleb stood up so fast the chair legs scraped against the floor. Then we're done. I didn't answer immediately. He lifted his chin, waiting. I'd seen that look before. Every compromise only convinced him to ask for more. This time I wasn't going to bargain. Okay, I said, then we're done. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. You're serious? You gave me an ultimatum. I'm not giving you access to my bank accounts. So according to your condition, the relationship is over. Elena, don't be ridiculous. I'm trying to build a future with you. No, I said quietly. You're trying to make my future dependent on your approval. His eyes narrowed. This is exactly what I mean. You never fully commit. Giving my boyfriend access to my accounts after 18 months is not commitment. It's reckless. He grabbed his phone off the table. You're really going to throw us away over money? I'm not throwing anything away. You made the relationship conditional on access to my money. I'm respecting the condition. For the first time that morning, he didn't have an answer. He stormed into the bedroom and started throwing his things into a bag. I didn't move until I heard the front door slam. 20 minutes later, he was gone. I changed the smart lock code before he could come back. I should have recognized what this had really been about. It was the realization that he'd been testing my boundaries for months, and I'd only just noticed. Then I blocked his number. If we were done, we were done. The first messages came through Facebook Messenger less than an hour later. Baby, please, let's talk. At least unblock me. I read them once, then set the phone face down on the counter. I spent the afternoon trying to stay busy before finally calling Mara. When she answered, she didn't even say hello first. He asked for your banking access, she said. Demanded it. And when you said no? He said we were done. Mara exhaled hard. Elena, that wasn't a conversation, that was a test. He expected you to panic. I think he did. And you didn't. No, I said, looking out at the wet street through my windshield. I think that surprised both of us. By 7 that evening, the doorbell rang. I opened the camera feed. Caleb stood outside my apartment, soaked from the rain and looking completely exhausted. Then he noticed the camera. His shoulders straightened and the pleading expression disappeared. Caleb, we're done. You made that clear this morning. His face crumpled immediately. Elena, please, I didn't mean it. Can we just talk? There's nothing to talk about. I'll pack your things tomorrow and leave them outside. You changed the lock code? Yes. This is my home too. I glanced around the apartment I'd rented long before he moved in. No, I said, it isn't. Your name isn't on the lease. The tears disappeared almost instantly. So where am I supposed to go? That's not my responsibility anymore. You're being cruel. No, I'm being clear. He stared into the camera, breathing unevenly. I was upset. I didn't really mean we were done. Then you shouldn't have used the relationship as a threat. For the next several minutes, he swung between apologies and insults, hoping one of them would make me open the door. A year ago, I probably would have unlocked it. Instead, I stepped back. Before I turned away, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was not from Caleb. It was from his brother, Nolan. You have no idea what you just started. I barely slept after Nolan's message. The words stayed on my phone screen long after midnight. You have no idea what you just started. I didn't answer. I deleted the message and turned off my phone. Sunday morning arrived gray and humid. For the first time in months, the apartment was quiet, and I realized I'd missed that feeling. Every room still carried traces of him, and for a long moment, I just stood there before reaching for the moving boxes. I wasn't mourning Caleb. I was mourning the relationship I thought we'd had. Eventually, I grabbed several moving boxes from the storage closet. If we were finished, there was no point dragging it out. I packed everything he'd left behind with more care than he probably deserved. I packed carefully because I refused to give him another excuse to call me the villain. By 10 o'clock, everything was stacked on the front porch. I sent one short message from my work phone. Your belongings are outside. Please collect everything before 6 p.m. Then I turned the phone face down. Half an hour later, my security camera notified me of movement. Caleb looked exhausted, but he had clearly made an effort to look like the victim. Nolan marched toward the door before Caleb could say anything. I opened it just enough to step outside. What exactly do you think you're doing? Nolan demanded. I'm returning Caleb's belongings. You locked him out over one argument. I accepted the ultimatum he gave me. His eyebrows shot upward. You know he didn't mean it. I only know what he said. Caleb finally stepped forward. Elena, please. His voice sounded softer than the night before. I've had time to think. So have I. Can we go inside? Just 5 minutes. No. His shoulders sagged. I don't understand why you're doing this. I met his eyes without raising my voice. You asked for access to my private bank accounts. I asked because we're building a future. No, I corrected gently. You demanded access under the threat of ending the relationship. It wasn't a threat. It became one the moment you said, then we're done. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The only sound came from birds somewhere across the parking lot. Then Nolan folded his arms. This is unbelievable. What is? My brother is standing here apologizing and you're acting like a lawyer instead of a girlfriend. I'm acting like someone who listened carefully. Brielle shifted awkwardly beside him. Unlike Nolan, she hadn't said a single harsh word. She simply watched the conversation unfold with an expression that looked more uncomfortable than angry. Caleb rubbed both hands across his face. I was emotional. So was I. I didn't really want to leave. You still left. I thought... He hesitated. I waited. I thought you'd stop me. Looking back, I should have recognized that expression. Every disagreement had always ended the same way. Caleb pushed harder until I gave in. There it was. He hadn't wanted an answer. He'd wanted me to surrender. You wanted me to be afraid, I said quietly. His eyes widened. You wanted me to chase you? I wanted you to fight for us. I fought by refusing to give in. He frowned. Nolan scoffed loudly. God, you're impossible. I looked at him. Am I? Relationships require compromise. They do. So why couldn't you compromise? I almost laughed. Compromise would have been discussing joint financial goals. I pointed toward the apartment. Compromise isn't giving someone unrestricted access to every dollar I've earned because they're angry. No one answered immediately. Caleb looked away first. His silence told me he understood the difference. He simply didn't like it. Finally, he tried one last approach. I just wanted to feel like we were really building something together. He sounded convincing. A year earlier, I probably would have believed him. Then I remembered every casual question he'd asked about my money, and suddenly none of it felt casual anymore. If I have to give you my bank account just to prove I love you, something is already wrong. Nolan threw his hands into the air. This has gone too far, Caleb. I nodded. I hope he finds someone who agrees with him. Even I hadn't expected those words to come out so calmly. Caleb stared at me, clearly confused that I wasn't crying. Without another word, Brielle quietly began lifting boxes toward the SUV. Nolan muttered under his breath but eventually helped. Caleb picked up the last box himself. Before placing it into the vehicle, he turned back. The pleading look vanished. He smiled instead. You'll regret this. I don't think so. You'll never find someone who loves you the way I do. I smiled faintly. If this is what your love looks like, I'm willing to take that risk. He climbed into the passenger seat. The SUV disappeared around the corner. I remained outside until it was completely gone. Only then did I walk back inside. The apartment felt emptier than before. Oddly enough, I could finally breathe. I expected loneliness. Instead, I felt lighter. It wasn't happiness. It was relief. That peace lasted less than 24 hours. Monday morning, my phone exploded with notifications before I'd even finished making coffee. I opened Facebook first. Caleb had written nearly 2,000 words. He tagged me by my full name. According to his version of events, I had thrown him onto the street without warning because he wanted financial honesty. He called me controlling, emotionally abusive, cold. A woman who loved money more than people. Hundreds of reactions poured in. Some strangers immediately believed him. A few mutual acquaintances asked what had happened. Others simply watched. Then one comment appeared that made my heart beat slow instead of race. Weren't you telling everyone Thursday night that once Elena trusted you with her accounts, you'd finally be able to quit working? Another comment followed almost immediately. Didn't you literally joke that she had more savings than anyone you'd ever dated? Seconds later, both comments disappeared. Deleted. But not before I captured screenshots. I didn't post them. Not yet. Instead, I closed Facebook, placed my phone on the counter, and stared through the kitchen window. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't another notification. It was an incoming call from the leasing office. As soon as I answered, the property manager spoke before I could say hello. Ms. Marlowe, we have someone here claiming you illegally evicted your boyfriend. I wasn't even surprised anymore. The leasing office manager sounded professional, but I could hear the hesitation in her voice. Ms. Marlowe, I wanted to let you know before you heard it from anyone else. I leaned against the kitchen counter. What happened? A young man named Caleb Morrison is here claiming he was illegally removed from apartment 4B. He says he was locked out of his residence. I closed my eyes for a brief second. Of course he did. I can come down with the lease if you need me. Actually, that won't be necessary. She paused while typing something. We've already checked our records. And? The apartment has only one legal tenant. Myself. That's correct. Relief washed through me, though it didn't last long. We simply wanted you to know because he seemed determined. Determined was a polite way of saying obsessed. Thank you for calling. If he returns or causes any disturbance, please notify us immediately. I will. The moment the call ended, I placed my phone on the counter and stared at it. Less than 2 days after our breakup, Caleb was already accusing me of illegally evicting him. I wasn't angry anymore. I was beginning to understand exactly who Caleb became when he didn't get what he wanted. Work should have distracted me. Instead, every few minutes, another notification appeared. A coworker asking if I was okay. A cousin forwarding screenshots from Facebook. Someone I hadn't spoken to since college asking whether the rumors were true. I answered almost everyone with the same short message. He demanded unrestricted access to my personal bank accounts. He said we'd break up if I refused. I refused. The apartment has always been legally mine. That was all I sent. The lease could speak for itself. Around 6 that evening, my phone rang again. The caller ID made me hesitate. Margaret Morrison, Caleb's mother. For several seconds, I simply watched the phone vibrate. Then I answered. Hello? Her voice sounded exhausted. Elena? Yes. Oh, thank goodness. She took a slow breath before continuing. Caleb is beside himself. I remained quiet. He told me you threw him out. He told you his version. Another silence followed. Then she surprised me. Would you tell me yours? So I did. I started from the beginning. I told her everything, from the article Caleb showed me to the moment he walked out. His exact words. My refusal. The breakup. Packing his belongings. Everything. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't insult him. I simply explained the sequence exactly as it happened. When I finished, she didn't speak for nearly 15 seconds. Finally, she asked quietly, he actually demanded access to your accounts? Yes. And the two of you have only been living together 6 months? That's right. Another long pause. Then came a weary sigh that sounded much older than the woman I knew. I'm sorry. I frowned. You don't owe me an apology. I know. Her voice cracked slightly. But I'm still sorry. Something in her voice made me stop pacing. She didn't sound shocked. She sounded tired. As his mother, she continued, I hoped he'd outgrow certain habits. Habits? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she asked another question. Where is he staying? I honestly don't know. I see. Her tone softened. He'll figure something out. Then she added something that stayed with me for days. He usually does. Usually. That word stayed with me. That single word made me wonder how many times she'd had this conversation before. The rest of the week became strangely peaceful. Without Caleb in the apartment, I noticed things I hadn't realized were missing. I cooked dinner without someone criticizing how long I spent in the kitchen. I watched movies without hearing complaints that I always chose boring films. I worked late one evening without receiving 3 separate texts asking why my career always came first. Even the apartment seemed different. Brighter. Larger. Calmer. It wasn't until Wednesday afternoon that the peace cracked again. A Venmo notification appeared. Request. $2,847. I stared at the screen. The note attached read, my portion of rent, utilities, emotional damages, and illegal eviction. I stared at the request, then laughed despite myself. It was too ridiculous to take seriously. I declined the request. Blocked him. Less than an hour later, a Zelle request arrived. The exact same amount. Blocked again. Friday morning brought a text from an unfamiliar number. It turned out to be Nolan. Caleb needs help getting another apartment. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I read the message 3 times. Not once did it ask whether I was okay. Not once did it acknowledge Caleb had ended the relationship himself. Everything assumed I owed him something. Finally, I replied. Caleb chose to end our relationship. He has a full-time job and family support. Please don't contact me again. Then I blocked that number too. I hoped, naively, that would be the end of it. Saturday morning proved otherwise. I had just poured myself a second cup of coffee when I heard voices outside my apartment. Not ordinary conversation. Arguing. I walked quietly toward the door and opened the camera feed. My stomach tightened instantly. Caleb stood outside with another man I had never seen before. The stranger crouched near my doorknob. A credit card slid between the frame and the latch. For a split second, I honestly wondered whether I was misunderstanding what I was seeing. Then the stranger pushed harder. They were trying to force my door open. I pressed the intercom immediately. I can see both of you. Both men froze. I have security cameras recording everything. The stranger jerked backwards so fast he nearly lost his balance. Caleb looked straight into the camera. I just want to get my things. You already collected everything. I have rights. No, I answered evenly. You don't. The stranger looked at Caleb. Dude, I lived here. You were never on the lease. Caleb ignored me. Instead, he spoke to the man beside him. It'll only take a second. The stranger shook his head immediately. No way. He backed away from the door. I'm not getting arrested over somebody else's breakup. He practically jogged toward the stairwell. Caleb remained where he was. His breathing became heavier. This isn't over. I met the camera lens. It will be if you leave now. He glared at the camera for another few seconds before finally walking away. I saved the recording in 3 separate locations before doing anything else. Cloud storage. External hard drive. My work laptop. Something deep inside me whispered that I would need it later. That whisper turned out to be right. Because less than 24 hours later, my landlord, not the leasing office, but the actual property owner, called me personally. And the first sentence out of his mouth made every muscle in my body go rigid. Ms. Marlowe, I've just received a formal legal letter from someone claiming to represent Caleb Morrison. I stood motionless after hanging up with Mr. Whitmore, the owner of my apartment building. His words refused to leave my head. I've received a formal legal letter from someone claiming to represent Caleb Morrison. For several seconds, I simply stared through my living room window. Outside, children were riding bicycles across the parking lot as though the world hadn't shifted beneath my feet. Inside, my pulse steadily climbed. I wasn't frightened because I thought Caleb had a legitimate case. I was frightened because people willing to invent one problem often had no hesitation inventing 10 more. I forced myself to breathe slowly. Tell me exactly what the letter says, I had asked Mr. Whitmore. It claims Caleb was unlawfully evicted from a residence where he'd established tenancy. Whoever wrote it says they'll pursue damages unless the matter is settled. And do you believe it? He chuckled softly. No. The single word loosened the knot in my stomach. I've owned rental properties for 26 years, Elena. I reviewed your lease before calling. Caleb's name has never appeared anywhere in our records. So I'm not worried. He paused before continuing. But because someone has formally contacted me, I have to respond through proper channels. I understand. I need anything you have that documents the end of your relationship. I can send everything. Good. Within 15 minutes, I emailed him copies of the lease, screenshots of Caleb's Facebook messages after our breakup, the conversation where he admitted he hadn't expected me to accept his ultimatum, and the security footage showing him attempting to enter the apartment after collecting all of his belongings. When I finally clicked send, I felt oddly calm. Screenshots didn't forget, even when people changed their stories. Monday morning began with another unknown number. Normally, I ignored calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Something told me not to this time. Hello? A deep, polished voice answered immediately. Ms. Marlowe? Yes. My name is Jason Wheeler from Wheeler and Associates. I reached for a notebook automatically. I'm listening. I represent Mr. Caleb Morrison regarding his unlawful eviction from the residence located on Brookstone Avenue. His tone sounded rehearsed, almost too rehearsed. I see. My client informs me he was a legal resident of the property. He was my boyfriend. He also resided there, as my guest. He disagrees. That's unfortunate. There was a brief silence. Then Jason continued. Mr. Morrison states he contributed financially to the household. He bought groceries sometimes. He also paid utilities. We occasionally split household expenses. So you acknowledge financial contribution. I acknowledge what every dating couple does. I leaned back in my chair. Buying groceries doesn't make someone a tenant. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he changed direction. My client says you changed the lock code without notice. I did. Why? Because he ended our relationship. He says that's inaccurate. I almost smiled. I have written messages documenting the conversation. Another pause. He says he never intended the relationship to end. Then he shouldn't have said, if you don't give me access to your bank accounts, we're done. Silence. Longer this time. Finally, he asked, bank accounts? Yes. My client requested financial transparency. My client demanded unrestricted access to my private banking information. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then Jason cleared his throat. I'll discuss this with Mr. Morrison. I think that's a good idea. He ended the call. Something about the entire conversation bothered me. Not the legal questions. The more he talked, the less he sounded like a lawyer. That wasn't normal. I called my friend Mara during lunch. She listened quietly before saying, have you talked to an attorney? Not yet. You should. That afternoon, she introduced me to her cousin Daniel, a real estate attorney with nearly 15 years of experience. We met over video call. After listening carefully to every detail, Daniel leaned back in his chair. You're in much better shape than you think. Really? Absolutely. He explained everything patiently. Caleb wasn't on the lease. No. He never paid rent directly. No. He stayed because you allowed him to. Yes. Legally speaking, that makes his position extremely weak. So he doesn't have a case? Daniel smiled. From everything you've described. He spread both hands. I don't see one. I felt my shoulders relax for the first time in days. But, he continued, don't underestimate people who know they're wrong. What do you mean? They often become more dangerous after they realize facts aren't on their side. His warning settled heavily in my mind.
Paying.
Tuesday afternoon brought another surprise. An Instagram message arrived from someone I barely recognized. Emma Collins. She worked with Caleb, though we'd only met twice at company events. Her message was unusually direct. Hi, Elena. I know this is awkward. You don't know me very well, but I think you deserve to know something. I frowned. Okay. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, another message arrived. Caleb has been talking about your savings for months. I read it twice. Months? Emma continued. He kept joking that once he got access to your accounts, he'd know exactly how much money you actually had. Another message followed. He said people never notice small transfers if you did them gradually. My fingers stopped moving. I read that sentence again, slowly. People never notice small transfers. My heartbeat became painfully loud. I typed back. Are you serious? Almost immediately she replied. I wish I weren't. Everyone thought he was kidding. Now, I'm not so sure. She attached 2 screenshots from a workplace group chat. I enlarged the first one. Caleb had written, once Elena finally trusts me with her banking app, I'll know exactly how comfortable we can live. The second screenshot hit even harder. She's got way more saved than she admits. Just have to be patient. I sat frozen. Not because I had discovered something entirely new, because it suddenly connected dozens of moments I'd dismissed over the past year. Every casual question about my bonuses, every comment about retirement, every suggestion that I shouldn't worry so much about investments because money should be enjoyed. Each one had seemed harmless. Suddenly, every question he'd ever asked about my money fit together. I thanked Emma sincerely. Then I saved every screenshot in multiple places. The following afternoon, Jason Wheeler called again. His confidence had returned. Ms. Marlowe, what can I do for you? My client is prepared to resolve this dispute amicably. There isn't a dispute. He would accept a settlement. I laughed before I could stop myself. For what? $5,000. I almost dropped my phone. I'm sorry? $5,000 in exchange for resolving the matter without litigation. I leaned forward. No. Silence. Then I asked quietly, Jason. Yes? What is your state bar number? Nothing. No answer. I'd like your license number. More silence. Finally, he spoke again, but his confidence had vanished. I'll have to call you back. The line disconnected. I lowered my phone slowly. Within minutes, I opened my laptop and searched for Wheeler and Associates. Nothing. No law office. No registered firm. No attorney profile. Nothing. I searched for Jason Wheeler, attorney. Still nothing. Then one search result appeared. Not an attorney. A certified personal trainer. The profile photo made my stomach sink. It was the same man whose voice had just threatened legal action against me. And according to his social media, he and Caleb had been friends for years. I immediately picked up my phone and called Daniel. He answered on the second ring. I think Caleb's lawyer. I swallowed hard. Isn't a lawyer at all. Daniel went completely silent. When he finally spoke, every trace of humor had disappeared from his voice. Elena, if that's true. This just became a criminal matter. Daniel didn't waste a second. Don't answer any more calls from him, he said firmly. Save every voicemail, every text, every email. If that man falsely represented himself as an attorney, you've moved beyond a relationship dispute. I leaned back in my office chair, still staring at the personal trainer's profile on my screen. The smiling man holding a barbell looked nothing like the polished legal professional who had called me twice. I honestly can't believe this. I can, Daniel replied. People who realize they don't have a legal case sometimes try to manufacture leverage. What should I do? File a police report today. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I'll go after work. And Elena. Yes? From this point forward, assume every interaction could end up in court. That sentence stayed with me the entire afternoon. For the first time since everything began, I stopped thinking like a former girlfriend. I started thinking like someone preserving evidence. That evening, I walked into the local police station carrying a folder thick enough to make my wrist ache. Screenshots. The apartment lease. Security camera footage. Copies of Caleb's Facebook posts. The Venmo request. The Zelle request. Messages from Nolan. The recordings of Jason Wheeler introducing himself as an attorney. Every document was dated and organized. The officer at the front desk listened patiently while I explained everything from the beginning. When I reached the part about the fake lawyer, he raised his eyebrows. He actually identified himself as an attorney? Twice. And you have recordings? I do. He accepted the flash drive I handed him. We'll look into this. I appreciate it. Before I left, he added one more sentence. If either of them contacts you again, don't argue. Just document it. I will. The following morning felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. Experience had already taught me that silence after Caleb usually meant he was planning something. Around 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed. Instagram. A new account. No profile picture. No followers. Only one message. Please talk to me. I didn't need to guess who it was. Another message arrived. I know Jason called you. That wasn't my idea. Then another. Nolan pushed me into it. Another. I never wanted any of this. I watched the typing indicator appear and disappear over and over again. Finally, a longer message arrived. I know I made mistakes. I know I shouldn't have asked about your bank accounts like that. I just wanted to know we were building a future together. Please give me one conversation. 1 hour. I'll apologize for everything. For a brief moment, I remembered the man I'd fallen in love with. The Caleb who surprised me with coffee outside my office after long work days. The Caleb who danced with me barefoot in the kitchen while dinner burned. The Caleb who made me laugh so hard during road trips that my stomach hurt. Those memories were real. But so were the screenshots. So were the lies. So was the man who had tried to break into my apartment. I typed exactly one sentence. Please communicate only through legal counsel. I blocked the account. Within seconds, another account appeared. Then another. The messages changed almost immediately. You're heartless. You're ruining my life. My mother won't even let me stay with her anymore because of you. Then the insults began. Cold. Selfish. Arrogant. Greedy. Finally, profanity. I blocked every account without responding. 2 weeks passed. Life slowly began finding a rhythm again. I focused on work. I met Mara for dinner twice. I started running in the mornings instead of scrolling through social media before work. For the first time in months, I noticed I wasn't constantly anticipating someone else's mood. The peace felt unfamiliar. Then Monday morning destroyed it. My phone erupted with notifications. Dozens of them. Coworkers, friends, former classmates, even my cousin in another state. The first text simply read, "Have you seen Facebook? A second followed. Please tell me this isn't true. My stomach tightened. I opened the app. At the top of my feed sat a fundraising campaign. The title alone made my chest tighten. Help me escape my financially abusive ex. The organizer, Caleb Morrison. I clicked. According to his story, I had controlled every dollar during our relationship. I had isolated him from friends, emotionally manipulated him, thrown him onto the street with nothing but the clothes on his back. He claimed he needed $10,000 to rebuild his life and receive therapy for the trauma I had caused. He had even uploaded photographs, pictures of himself crying, old photos of us together. One image where my face had clearly been edited to appear darker and harsher. Another showing bruises on his arm that I had never seen before. I felt physically sick, not because I believed anyone would accept it, because I knew some people would. Lies spread faster than corrections. I closed the fundraiser before reading another word. Then my phone rang. Mara. I've already reported it, she said before I could speak. So have 3 other people from work. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything. She paused. Just don't read the comments. Unfortunately, I already had. Some strangers called me abusive. Others accused me of using money to control men. But mixed among them were people who actually knew Caleb. One comment caught my attention immediately. Funny how you forgot to mention asking Elena for access to all of her bank accounts. A minute later, another appeared. Didn't you tell everyone after happy hour that you'd never have to worry about money once she trusted you? Then, one name appeared that I recognized instantly. Emma Collins. She didn't write an opinion. She posted evidence. Screenshot after screenshot. The workplace messages. The jokes about my savings. The comments about gradually moving money. The conversation where Caleb laughed about finally seeing the whole picture once he got into my banking app. Within minutes, the fundraiser comments exploded. People who had donated demanded refunds. Others accused Caleb of manipulating the story. Someone shared screenshots from his deleted Facebook posts. Another person uploaded the security camera article from our apartment complex confirming he had never been a tenant. The fundraiser disappeared less than 3 hours later. Removed. Just like that. I stared at the blank page where it had been. For the first time since our breakup, Caleb's carefully constructed narrative had collapsed under the weight of its own contradictions. That evening, my phone rang again. Margaret Morrison, I answered quietly. She sounded as though she hadn't slept. Elena. Hello? I owe you another apology. You don't owe me anything. I do. She took a shaky breath. This isn't the first time Caleb has done something like this. I closed my eyes. Somehow, I had already suspected that. There was someone before you. I remained silent. Her name was Vanessa. Margaret's voice grew softer. He convinced her to give him access to one of her credit cards for emergencies. And? He maxed it out. I felt my stomach drop. When she canceled the card, he told everyone she was financially controlling him. The room became painfully quiet. I should have warned you when the two of you started dating, she whispered. I honestly believed he'd matured. I looked out the window at the evening sky slowly turning orange. For months, I had wondered whether I had missed obvious warning signs. Now I realized something even more unsettling. The signs hadn't been new. They had simply belonged to someone who had practiced this before. As I ended the call, another notification appeared on my phone. This one wasn't from Caleb. It was from Daniel. Police have identified Jason Wheeler. They're requesting formal statements tomorrow morning. The case was no longer about a breakup. It was becoming something much bigger. By the time I arrived at the police station the following morning, the situation had become something I never imagined possible on the Saturday Caleb demanded access to my bank accounts. Back then, I thought we were arguing about trust. Now I was giving statements in a fraud investigation. Detective Lawson greeted me with a thick folder already sitting on the conference table. We've reviewed the recordings, he said. I handed him another folder. I also brought the original files from my security cameras. Good. He flipped through several pages before looking back at me. We interviewed Jason Wheeler yesterday. My heart skipped. And? He admitted almost immediately that he isn't an attorney. I let out a slow breath I hadn't realized I was holding. He confessed? He did. The detective folded his hands. According to his statement, Caleb offered him $500 if he would pretend to represent a law firm and pressure you into paying a settlement. Apparently, Caleb believed $500 was enough to buy intimidation. What happens now? I asked. Jason is facing charges related to criminal impersonation and the unauthorized practice of law. And Caleb? We're still interviewing everyone involved. I nodded. Whatever happened next would happen without my interference. For the first time, the investigation no longer depended on me. 3 days later, my phone buzzed while I was reviewing reports at work. It was Daniel. They filed charges. My fingers stopped moving across the keyboard. Against both of them? Yes. He sounded pleased. Jason admitted everything. Caleb's messages helped corroborate the conspiracy. For the first time in nearly a month, I smiled without forcing it. Not because I wanted revenge, because reality had finally caught up with fiction. Unfortunately, Caleb wasn't finished. The following Monday, another notification swept across social media. This time it wasn't another fundraiser. It was a public post accusing me of destroying his career. He claimed I had weaponized the legal system. He insisted the investigation was retaliation because he had dared to question my financial secrecy. The comments looked very different than they had during the first week. Instead of sympathy, people asked questions. Didn't your fake lawyer admit everything? Weren't you the one trying to access her bank accounts? Why did you lie about being illegally evicted? Some of Caleb's closest friends stayed silent. Others quietly unfollowed him. The narrative he had spent weeks building was collapsing piece by piece. He deleted the post before the evening was over. Tuesday brought another unexpected phone call. Margaret. Hello, Elena. Hi. I wanted you to hear this from me before someone else tells you. I listened quietly. Caleb lost his job this morning. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry to hear that. I am too, she sighed. They didn't fire him because of the breakup. I know. They terminated him after learning about the fraud investigation. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then she said something that stayed with me. I've spent years protecting him from the consequences of his own decisions. Another pause. I can't do that anymore. There was sadness in her voice, but also acceptance. When we ended the call, I realized something important. Not everyone who loved Caleb approved of what he had become. Some people had simply hoped he would eventually change. Thursday afternoon brought one final surprise. A courier delivered official court papers to my office. For a brief second, I thought Caleb had somehow found another way to continue the nightmare. Daniel called before I even finished reading the first page. I already know. You do? The court clerk sent me a copy. I almost laughed. You won't believe this. Oh, I believe it. What is he suing me for? Defamation. I stared at the papers. He claims you damaged his reputation by filing a police report. I blinked. The police report that resulted in criminal charges? The very same one. I couldn't help laughing this time. Not because lawsuits were funny, because the logic was unbelievable. Daniel laughed too. I've been practicing law for 14 years. And this may be one of the weakest complaints I've ever read. So we're asking the court to dismiss it. And we're filing a counterclaim for harassment and attorney's fees. The confidence in his voice made something inside me finally relax. For weeks, every day had introduced another crisis. Now, professionals were handling them. The criminal hearing took place the following week. I wasn't required to testify because Jason had already confessed. Daniel called afterward to summarize everything. Jason received probation, community service, fines, and professional sanctions. And Caleb? He accepted responsibility for conspiracy rather than risk trial. What does that mean? Probation, community service, a permanent criminal record. I sat quietly for several moments after the call ended. I didn't celebrate. There was nothing joyful about watching someone destroy his own future, even someone who had tried to destroy mine. Life finally began feeling normal again. One Saturday morning, almost exactly 5 weeks after everything started, I stopped at a neighborhood farmer's market. I wandered between fresh flowers and produce stands with no particular schedule. No anxious texts asking where I was. No guilt for spending money on myself. No arguments waiting at home. As I reached for a basket of peaches, someone beside me smiled. Those are actually really good. I looked up. A tall man about my age stood holding a paper bag filled with vegetables. He smiled awkwardly. I'm Reed. I'm Elena. He hesitated before speaking again. This is going to sound strange. I raised an eyebrow. I almost went on a blind date with someone connected to Caleb. That caught my attention. My coworker warned me after everything became public. He shrugged. So, in a weird way, I guess your situation saved me from making a terrible decision. I laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. A strange way to meet someone. It is. We ended up talking for nearly 40 minutes. Not about court. Not about Caleb. Not about lawsuits. We talked about hiking trails, books, coffee, his rescue dog named Murphy. The conversation flowed so naturally that I stopped checking every word before I said it. No manipulation. No testing. No hidden agenda. Before leaving, he smiled. Would you like to have dinner sometime? I looked at him for a moment. 5 weeks earlier, I would have wondered whether saying yes too quickly meant something. Now I simply asked myself one question. Did I want to? The answer surprised me. Yes, I'd like that. Over the following months, I occasionally heard updates through mutual acquaintances. Caleb moved back in with his mother. The fundraiser platform permanently suspended his account. The civil lawsuit against me was dismissed almost immediately. My counterclaim resulted in the court ordering him to reimburse a significant portion of my legal fees. Nolan eventually called to apologize. He admitted he had defended his younger brother without ever asking what had actually happened. I wanted to keep the peace, he confessed. I know, I answered. Sometimes keeping the peace means ignoring the truth. I've realized that. I accepted his apology. Holding on to anger would only have extended Caleb's influence over my life. Looking back now, I don't think the relationship ended because I refused to share my bank accounts. It ended because Caleb believed love entitled him to control. The moment I said no, he revealed exactly how conditional his affection had always been. I kept my apartment. I kept my savings. Most importantly, I kept the peace I'd almost traded away. Sometimes people ask what the biggest lesson was. I didn't leave that relationship afraid of love. I left it knowing that real love never demands control. The right person will never demand access to your boundaries as proof of your love. Anyone who turns respect into an ultimatum has already told you everything you need to know.